This is American history for October the 30th. Democrat Republicans had not allowed the first bank of the United States to be rechartered, and it died in 1811. This immediately brought on inflation at a time in which we were trying to get out of the panic of 1807. We were fighting a war with Great Britain. And so in 1816, one of the last acts of the Madison administration was to recharter and create the second national bank of the United States. Now, with money being made from the national bank, Congress was able to authorize the building of roads and the building of canals. Now, these roads and canals would help out the West and help out the North, but never really help out the South, and that's going to be a bone of contention. The population of the United States was beginning to shift. More and more people were going west of the Appalachian Mountains and settling in the Ohio River Valley and the Missouri River Valley. As more and more people arrived, the price of land became higher and higher and higher. This brought on speculators. Now, this would be during the first and second Monroe administration. Now, a speculator is somebody who wants to buy land at a cheap price, sit on it for a few years, and then sell the land for a much higher price. That's how it was supposed to work. But many of these speculators had borrowed money, and they owed the money back. And when they got to the point to pay the money back, the land had not gone up that much in value, and there really weren't a whole lot of customers. Many of these speculators are going to go bankrupt. Now, many of these speculators had borrowed their money from state banks. These state banks were not fully backed by specie, and now the banks are on the hook for the money that they have lent out, but has not come back in. It was difficult for the banks to pay off their commitments. In the end, the speculators could not purchase the land, and the banks foreclosed on the land. In the end, the banks could not survive, and their extended credit is going to be purchased by the second national bank. So if you're still with me, speculators buy land and can't make the payments, so the state banks are going to repossess the land. The state banks can't meet their obligation, and so they will be forced to give away this land to the second national bank as collateral. The second national bank by 1824, this would be the end of Monroe's second administration, will control a great amount of land in the West. The national bank was controlled mostly by people in the East who had considerable wealth. The national bank would only sell land out west for farmers who could pay for it in specie. Now, the problem was most of these farmers didn't have specie. They might have paper money, but the paper money might be on some state bank, and it's really not worth as much as the specie. This meant that Westerners could not buy land. And this really left a bad taste in the mouth of the Westerners. Now remember, 1824 is a presidential election year, and Monroe will not seek a third term. With the collapse of the land market, a panic developed. Now, a panic is where lots of people are out of jobs. And the panic of 1819 is going to cause farmers to lose their land. It's going to cause factories to close. And it's going to be a time in which Americans are angry at those who are the well-to-do. Well, in 1824, it is time to elect a new president. As I said a moment ago, Monroe chose not to run for a third term. The Democrats are going to caucus, and they are going to choose William Crawford from Georgia. But Crawford was chosen by a caucus. And many of the people did not feel that Crawford was the right choice. They felt that a caucus was too narrow-minded. They felt that Crawford could not win. Now, the Federalists, what's left of them, will nominate John Quincy Adams of Massachusetts. So we now have our two candidates, John Quincy Adams, but then again, John Quincy Adams is a Federalist, and the Federalists are not a national party, and William Crawford, who is the Democrat Republican. Enter Henry Clay. Henry Clay was from out west, and many of the western states were dissatisfied with an Easterner like Adams and an Easterner like Crawford. And a Western conference, this Western caucus, is going to get together, and those states that border the Ohio River are going to nominate Henry Clay. So now we've got three candidates: Quincy Adams, a Federalist; Crawford, a Democrat Republican; and Clay, a Democrat Republican. And we're not done yet. There were others who said no, that Andrew Jackson spoke for the people of the West. Now, Jackson convened a convention. A convention is all the party faithful will descend, and there they will pick their nominee. And surprise, surprise, they picked Jackson. So now we have four candidates: Crawford, a Democrat Republican chosen by a caucus; Clay, a Democrat Republican chosen by caucus; John Quincy Adams, a Federalist, but remember the Federalists are not a national party, just a regional party; and Andrew Jackson, a Democrat Republican chosen by a convention. Here are the states. Now, it might be a little hard to see, but the orange states are states that voted for Clay. The blue states are states that voted for Crawford. The greenish colored states are states that voted for Jackson. And the pinkish colored states are states that voted for John Quincy Adams. Now, if we look at the top pie chart, none of the candidates have received a majority of the Electoral College votes. However, Jackson can point to the popular votes. This is the first election in which the people are allowed to vote. And most of the states west of the Appalachian Mountains will cast their popular vote. But we don't elect a president on popular vote. We elect a president on Electoral College votes. So what are we going to do now? Well, the Constitution says that the states that the House of Representatives will decide, and that the House of Representatives may only look at three candidates. So Clay is taken off the list because he got the fewest votes. Crawford, before the House can vote, is going to suffer a stroke. So now it's a two-person race, Adams and Jackson. Now remember, no matter how many representatives you have, the state is only allowed one vote. Clay, who was Speaker of the House, is going to make a deal. Clay is going to work to get some of his states to follow him and some of Crawford's states to follow him, and then Clay will throw his votes to John Quincy Adams. Now, of course, Jackson said, I got the most Electoral College votes, I got the most popular votes, I should be the president. But Clay was successful, and John Quincy Adams is elected president. Now, for this favor, Clay is going to be appointed Secretary of State. Remember, that's the stepping stone to the White House. Clay is going to join President Adams. Unfortunately, Adams is not well liked by Congress, and very little of what Adams wants to be accomplished is going to be accomplished. Here's a video that talks about the Adams administration. John Adams is going to find that Congress is composed mostly of Democrat Republicans or a new party called Democrats. And because of this, it is almost as if they're going to do nothing until 1828. Jackson is angry with the Democratic Republican Party, and Jackson suggests that the members of the Democratic Republican Party who were for him should join his new party, which is named the Democratic Party. Now, Jackson is going to create an apparatus in which will have an easier way for a candidate to be nominated and an easier way for Democrats to be elected president. The Democratic Party that Jackson begun is the Democratic Party today. Many of the rules that the Democratic Party came up with in those days are still carried on by the modern Democratic Party. Now, if it will help you out, the modern Republican Party is going to use many of the same rules. Well, in 1828, Jackson will run, as will John Quincy Adams. The yellow states are Mr. Jackson. The brownish colored states are Mr. Adams. You can see that it is a great victory for Andrew Jackson. Just as importantly, the Democrats control the House, and there are more democratically controlled states who pick the senators than there are Federalists. The Democrats are going to become the dominant party. Now, what about those in the Democrat-Republican Party who did not go along with Jackson? What about those who supported the Federalists? They will form a new political party for 1832. We like to say that Jackson is the beginning of manifest destiny. Now, manifest destiny is the belief that God has chosen the American people to rule from sea to shining sea. Now, we already control 2/3 of the continent, but there's big sections that we don't control. And many Americans are saying we need to take over Texas. We need to take over California. We need to take over Washington. All of this is part of manifest destiny. We're going to hear a great deal more about manifest destiny as we get deeper into this lesson and the next. Well, I think this would probably be a good place for us to stop.